Welcome to Topics in Digital Economics. My name is Paul Belflamme. This presentation addresses the following question: how to launch a digital platform? Well, it's easy to understand that this is a big challenge. Think of a platform linking two groups, Group A and Group B. Group A is willing to participate only if Group B participates, but Group B is willing to participate only if Group A participates. Well, this is known as the chicken and egg problem, or also called mutual bidding problem or circulation conundrum. It's based on the existence of two self-fulfilling prophecies. If each group believes the other group will participate, then everybody is willing to participate. But if each group believes that the other group will not participate, then nobody is going to participate. Now, if you want to solve this problem, first of all, you need to decide whether the chicken or the egg should come first. Then you need to find ways to catch chickens or to collect eggs, whichever you decided to attract first. Then you need to make chickens confident to find eggs, or the other way around, and if necessary, you may have to lay the first eggs yourself. This is what I want to describe in this presentation. Well, first of all, you need to go from linkage to leverage. So the first step for any platform, this is what we did before, is to identify the links between the users. And you can do so by drawing the linkage map of your platform. Now, to start the platform, you need to activate the links. So this is the precondition to generate a positive feedback loops and let network effects attract new users on the platform and work by themselves. But you need to start somewhere. And so the question is, where do you start? So take a platform linking two groups, and there are positive cross-site network effects between these two groups. So we know that more participation in Group A triggers more participation in Group B, and vice versa. And the question really is it better to use Group A or Group B as a leverage? Will the positive feedback loop be more important if you start with Group A or if you start with Group B? Now, to answer this question, let's take the following analogy. Think of the platform as the fulcrum on which a beam is resting, and if you push on the beam on one side, you can lift a load on the other side. This is a first-class lever. Okay, now the analogy is that the length of the beam will be the strength of the positive network effect. Okay, the effort you exert on one side of the beam is how much you need to spend in order to acquire a particular user in a particular group. And the idea is, by attracting this user, you can use the cross-site network effects to attract users in the other group. And so the load would be your objective, which is to attract more and more users in the other group. Now, you can put either group on each side of the beam, and the question is, which one should you use as the one that will exert the leverage? Okay, so the rule is clearly that you want to have this first-class lever as efficient as possible. And how can you do this? Well, you want, for a given load, either to minimize the effort, or again, for a given effort, have the longest possible beam, which is the largest possible positive cross-site network effect. So the rule is that you want to select the group with the largest attraction power, which is the cross-group network effect, and or the smallest customer acquisition cost. If you follow this rule, you would have a more efficient lever if you select that group. Okay, now the question is, how can you evaluate for these two groups the relative importance of the customer acquisition cost and of the attraction power? Remember, you want to select the group which has either the lower customer acquisition cost or the largest attraction power. Okay? Now, you can evaluate different forms of costs when you have to acquire consumers. Of course, like for any new business, you will have to prospect users. And you can ask, if you've got two groups, for which group is it more costly to identify and reach potential users. For example, if you link buyers and sellers, well, sellers might be harder to prospect than buyers, or the other way around, depending on the circumstances. More importantly, for a platform, you need to evaluate the cost of easing the adoption of the users. Okay, and the question to ask is, for which group is it more costly to provide users with standalone services, or to help users acquire the necessary assets to interact on the platforms? Okay, if you think of Uber, for example, well, it's clearly more costly for drivers to be on the platform because simply they need a car, whereas riders don't need anything except their mobile phone. Okay, and very importantly, you also need to evaluate for which group it is more costly to alleviate asymmetric information problems, and so to establish trust on the platform. Okay, is there a group for which trust is more important and so more costly to establish than for the other group? Okay, so by putting all this together and comparing these different forms of costs for the two groups, you may have an idea of which group is more costly to acquire than the other one. Okay, and given for some attraction power that we will discuss in a minute, you will select the group with the lower customer acquisition costs. Now, you need also to look at attraction power. And how do you compare groups again? Well, here, the group that will exert a larger attraction power is the one for which it is harder to contact them outside the platform. So the more one group needs the platform to contact or to interact with another group, then this other group has a large attraction power, because it's only through the platform that they can be accessed. Okay, the same idea is formulated here a bit differently. We talk of homing possibilities to describe the fact that users can be on several platforms at the same time. We call those users who can be on several platforms at the same time multi-homers, and those platforms who are those users who are restricted to be on a single platform at a time, they are called single homers. Now, you can understand that single homers exert a larger attraction power than multi-homers. For the same reason that was explained here, you really need to be on the platform if you want to interact with the single homers, because you will not find them on any other platform. And so the platform who has single homers can use them as a strong bait attraction to attract the other group. Okay. Now, the third factor that you may want to compare across the two groups is whether there exist same-side network effects. And in particular, if within a particular group you have positive same-side network effects, then this group is probably the right group to attract first, because any user you attract in this group will come along other users of the same group. Okay, so you attract several users at the same time with the same effort if within this group you already have same-side network effects. Of course, the reverse applies if the group you're considering exhibits negative same-side network effects. Then you understand that it's harder to attract these users if they if they don't want to be together on the platform. Okay, so I repeat, the idea is really to compare these different factors, either the different types of costs or the different reasons for which attraction power is larger or smaller. So to compare this across the two groups and to come up with an evaluation of which group has the lowest customer acquisition cost and which group has the larger attraction power. Okay, and then if you evaluate this roughly, you can have an idea of which group you may want to attract. Now, we need to understand here that you may have different conclusions in the two boxes here. You may find that it is the same group that has, for example, the lowest customer acquisition cost, but also the lowest attraction power. Then it's a matter of deciding which factor is more important than the other, again to try and see which group should be attracted first. Now, at the end of all this process, you may still decide that there is no reason to separate the two groups. They are roughly equivalent, which is a perfectly fine answer. And then you will decide, for example, to split your marketing expenses between the two groups. But in general, you should be able to identify the group that you should attract first. Now comes the question of what kind of strategy you can deploy to attract this group you have identified. Okay, and we'll go over a number of strategies now that either exploit large attraction power or focus on low customer acquisition costs. Okay, let's start with strategies that leverage large attraction power. One well-known strategy is called incubate garden eggs. Okay, so it's the idea to concentrate on these users who are seen as more prominent by other users. They are sometimes called the marquee users, okay, because they generate stronger cross-site network effects. Okay, and so it pays for a platform to attract these marquee users at an early stage, and also if they compete with other platforms to sign exclusive deals with these marquee users. Okay, so you've got here a number of examples like popular games on video game consoles, or opinion leaders on news media, influencers on social media. These are these marquee users that you would like to have on board early on because of the strong cross-site network effects they exert, so the strong attraction power. Okay. Now, the downside of this strategy is that it may be costly to attract these marquee users because they will negotiate very attractive exclusive deals for them, so you have probably to pay them quite a lot. Okay, and you may also later on risk seeing them starting their own platform. Think of Disney leaving Netflix a few years ago. Now, a second strategy would be to expand the Hen House. So the idea here is to start the platform on a small scale, either by focusing on a particular geographical location or focusing on these users that are relatively keener to interact with one another. Okay, so it's a niche platform that you should start with, and you may use it as a proof of concept that later on will demonstrate your capacity to extend the platform either to other market segments or to other geographical locations. Okay, so this is what food delivery platforms are doing. They start in a particular city, then they extend to others. But if you think about it, well-known platforms have also started small, like Facebook or Airbnb. Now, it works for some platforms, but not for others. If you need, at the very start already, to have a large number of users to make users confident to find one another or to have sufficient liquidity, then starting small will not work. Okay, and also you may think of well-known platforms which are still expanding nowadays, and you may ask yourself whether they do this because they find it profitable or because they've never found anything profitable so far. Okay, so keep that in mind. Now, a third strategy that has to do with attraction power, we call it beat egg whites. You probably know that when you beat egg whites, actually you increase by 4 to 6 times the volume of the eggs. Okay, now there's the same idea here, which is that you want to concentrate on positive same-side network effects that may exist within a group. Okay, and so this is the idea that I explained already before. If there are these positive same-side network effects, if you attract one user, well, you attract several users at the same time because they kind of encourage one another to join. Okay, so and you can actually create this through your strategy, for example, by letting people play together with friends on a video game. Okay, so that's a strong motivation for groups of friends to join at the same time. Okay, or you can, as is done also in other businesses, encourage users to sponsor new users to come on the platform. Okay, of course, that has a cost. If you have, for example, to give discounts to those users who sponsor new users, well, these are profits or revenues that will be decreased because of that. Okay, final strategy leveraging large attraction power. We call it boost expectations, because it plays on the expectations that users are forming when they join a platform. Remember, users care about interacting with other users, but they cannot see whether users will join or not, so they need to form expectations about the decision of other users. Now, as a platform operator, you can try to make sure that users have positive expectations, that your users will believe that other users will join. And if they do so, then the self-fulfilling prophecy that we'll realize will be actually that a lot of consumers or users will participate. So the question is, how can you generate these optimistic expectations? Well, first of all, by having a clear and appealing value proposition, and also by advertising the participation of users. And you may want to emphasize that a lot and make statements about how many future users you believe will join the platform. Okay, well, this is of course something that has to be done carefully, because you don't want to disappoint your users at some point if you have done an overestimation of the future numbers on the platform. Okay, let us move now to strategies that exploit small customer acquisition costs. Okay, one strategy is called shelter runaway chickens. Okay, here the previous strategy, boost expectations and beat whites, had to do with positive network effects. Here, in a sense, you want to exploit negative network effects that may arise on another platform. Okay, so here that's a strategy for a platform that enters a market where there is already a big player. But on this big platform, some users may feel that there are too many of their kind. For example, sellers may find that there is too much competition among them. And this is where, being a small platform entering the market, you may actually have an advantage by telling these sellers, well, come to my platform, because there you will find lower competition. There will be fewer sellers, and so the competition will be lower. So in a sense, you do a judo strategy by exploiting the strength of your opponent, okay, and exploiting this to your own advantage. Okay, so sellers, as I was saying, may prefer a smaller platform with fewer other sellers, or users may prefer less popular software because it attracts fewer hackers, or users may prefer a messaging app that guarantees privacy, okay, which also has to do with a smaller base of users, right? So this is a potential strategy, but the downside, of course, is that you need to keep negative network effects limited once you grow. So this platform works quite well if you are relatively small with respect to an existing platform, but if you want to grow, then you may no longer be able to exploit this advantage. A second strategy, focusing on small CAC, would be to partner with a chicken farm. Okay, so if it's hard for you to attract users or just to prospect them, right? Or if it's just too slow for you to do that, you may work in partnership with an existing platform that already has onboarded a group of users that you are targeting. Okay, so big platforms offer this possibility, basically, like Facebook or Google. They allow other platforms to use the Facebook Connect or the Google Sign-in to make it easier for users to connect with the new platform. Okay, and if you think of Airbnb, when it started, it had this button on the platform which said which was telling the hosts that they could publish with a simple click their flat or accommodation directly on another platform, well-known existing platform, which is called Craigslist. Okay, so basically you use a partner platform to acquire customers in a quicker and cheaper way. Of course, you would need normally to agree with the partner whether and under which terms you can do that. Sometimes you can kind of go around this by, I wouldn't say stealing, but attracting users without necessarily the consent of this other platform. This is a strategy which some people call piggybacking. Okay. Now, final strategy focusing on CAC is called offer chicken and eggless diet. Okay, so here the idea is to attract one group with other services that we call standalone services, which actually are independent in a sense of the participation of the other group. Okay, so let's take an example. TikTok, from what I know, is also entertaining for users who are not following any other user. So in a sense, you can use the platform on your own and derive already quite a lot of value from that. So that kind of breaks the link between the two groups, and so reduces the chicken and egg problem. Okay, but of course, to do so, there is also a cost. You would need to produce these standalone services, okay, and you would also reduce the network effects you can capitalize on. Okay, so this strategy actually is a weaker version of a more drastic strategy, which is to lay the first eggs yourself. Okay, and this brings us back to the discussion of how a platform differs from a pipeline. Okay, and actually the message here is that if it's too costly to launch the platform, so if you find no way to solve the chicken and egg problem from using any of the previous strategies, then the best course of action may be to forget for a while of being a platform and start as a pipeline. Okay, so basically the strategy is to integrate, at least partially, with one side of the market. Okay, and so reassure the other side that they will find the service that they need. And if you think about it, many of the big platforms that we know nowadays have started in this way. The first gaming consoles were bundled with their own games. Apple dominated the early years of the personal computer with an integrated approach, and Amazon started as a reseller and only later became a marketplace. Okay, I said later because that's the next step. Disintegration may come at some later point in time once one side of the market has joined the platform, then you can open the other side. Okay, and this is what these well-known platforms have done at some point. Okay, and so you see that there is a kind of intermediate or hybrid business model between platforms and pipelines. Nothing is never set in stone, and firms are actually choosing through time where they want to locate their business model somewhere between a pure platform model and a pure pipeline model. Okay, and as you see on the slides here, there are different ways through which businesses can be somewhere in between platforms and pipelines. So let us take stock of what we have learned in this presentation. First of all, to launch a platform, you need users in one group to attract users in the other group, and vice versa. This is the well-known chicken and egg problem. So you need to decide which group to attract first, and the principle is that you should concentrate on the group that has a lower CAC and or a larger attraction power. Now, if you want to measure these two factors, the CAC are the costs of prospecting users, easing their adoption, and establishing trust, whereas the attraction power is larger for a group that is harder to reach outside the platform. And on that basis, you can design a number of strategies that either exploit large attraction power or low customer acquisition cost. That's it for now. Thank you for your attention. Bye-bye.